these ideas were also sort of taken up by Osamu Tezuka, who was known for the creation of Astro Boy. This was one of my favorite cartoons growing up, even though now it makes me a little sad. And although the Japanese people tend to have a different perception of robots than we do in the West, I like using Astro Boy because he's a great example of a robot as a technology of peace and salvation. He's a benevolent creation overall, and interesting, he's a child. He learns and he questions the world like a child does, and he's also credited with being the first robot in science fiction to have a soul, which is fun, and points out the differences between Tezuka and Asimov. Since Tezuka didn't actually like Asimov's rules, he thought they weren't complete because they didn't address personhood and artificial beings. Very interesting. Okay, so another thing, Asimov is sort of credited with the term robot itself, even though when he's asked, he's like, I don't know, it just came to me one time. It's actually originating with a Czech author named Karel Čapek, who in 1921, a year after Asimov was born, Čapek released a play called Rossum's Universal Robots, or RUR. It was about industrial workers being replaced and eventually killed by the robotic workers that developed human feelings. He took the word from archaic Czech, robota, which originally referred to the obligatory work done in medieval times. So while in Europe we talked about serfs, in the Czech language they talked about robotniks, which is funny. So the term robot took a while to catch on, but Asimov is probably best known for popularizing it, even if he didn't come up with it himself. So also the theme of distrust doesn't really originate with Asimov, but he's definitely the most referenced author when it comes to robot and android themed works today. He drew on this idea of Frankenstein complex, which really fleshes out this fear of robots, as well as the scientists that develop them and any other technology in general. So those with the complex mostly fear being dominated by machines or replaced by them. And this all lingers despite the 3 laws of robotics. It shows a lot of the concerns the public have about science overall, and this vision of a lone scientist developing who knows what in their labs. Well, when will we know? Oh, I don't know. So the closer machines were to resembling people then, the more everyone worried about what scientists were doing, and then all levels of technology and robots, from the most advanced and human-like right down to the mindless automatons. And this is partly related to something we call the uncanny valley, which is a hypothesis proposed by Masahiro Mori. And it really might explain a lot. So where attempts to create or recreate human likeness, it really makes us uncomfortable. It creates this discomfort in people when an object is close, but not quite right. And the closer it is, the weirder it is. So traditionally, things like disembodied hands and zombies occupied the lowest part of the valley. But now we're seeing human-like androids and robots, especially those with synthetic skin, are really taking over that place. You may have experienced this discomfort before watching a Christmas special. Has anyone seen Polar Express? Yeah, did it make you really uncomfortable? This is for the reasons outlined in the Uncanny Valley, since it was human-like and it was animated over top of natural human actions, but it just wasn't quite right. And apparently a lot of people had to leave during the film because they just couldn't take it anymore. So it actually occupies this part of the film. If that didn't do it to you, these 3 individuals might. So these are known as actroids. They're androids with strong human-like appearance, and they're being developed by Osaka University. And they're modeled after real people. So Ayako Fuji is a well-known NHK newscaster on one of the largest news networks in Japan. The one in the middle is one of the co-founders of this program working on these robots, so of course he made one that looks like him. And then the man with the weird wig, doesn't look right, is a Danish man named Henrik Sharp. And apparently this model perfectly imitates his gestures and movements, and has been said to be a very good dancer. I don't know. But to bring this back to technology more generally, since a lot of our current technologies obviously don't look like us, but they still kind of make us uncomfortable, even though we use them all the time. There's just something that makes us wary. So I think at the core of it is the fact that we're not all engineers and designers. And because we now have so many devices and things that we don't know how to use, this really gets our brains working. So we see the connection between our actions and the outcome, but there's this black box and this real gap in knowledge that we can't intuitively fill. And as is often the case, the space of things that we don't know sort of gets filled with human imagination. So gremlins in the works and ghosts in the machine. My computer, I know it's a mechanical thing, but sometimes I swear it's working against me. Or it's at least not working with me. I personify my technologies, and a lot of us do that. So sometimes we even refer to our electronics as if they're living things. A computer can get a virus. It goes to sleep. It can hibernate. It can definitely die. I yell at things all the time, even though I'm aware of how crazy this is. It's just really hard not to do, and I know I'm not the only one, so you can't just laugh at me. Modern technology, this is a fun topic that I can't go too much into, but modern technology also is very much like magic. We can be surprised and delighted by what it can do, but there remains a number of like smoke and mirror components. And while I think it's really good to maintain a certain level of enchantment in the world, it's also important to remember the human factor behind the creation and the use of technology. So there is an explanation behind all of the tricks of our technology, even if we can't always get a straight answer from the magicians themselves. So the question then is, who is in control? As individuals, I know it's easy to feel overwhelmed by things happening on a collective or society level. The vast majority of us will never design or make the technologies that we use, and it's easy to feel helpless. But this is not a new phenomenon, as we can see through all of the history. It might not make you feel any better to know, too, that even those who make these technologies are not fully in control, since no one can actually predict properly how technologies will be used when they're released into the social world that we occupy. Technologies are used for a number of unintended and unforeseen things. I'm not sure the people who developed the internet would ever predict the sheer volume of cat pictures we now see. And I highly doubt that the people developing tablets ever thought they would be used to entertain cats too. We have dot matrix printers and floppy disk drives being repurposed to perform musical numbers. There's one group called The User that make dot matrix symphonies. It's really kind of eerie music, but it's impressive. Turntables have been used to make spirograph art. So it's fascinating what people manage to do with the technologies that they're given. And so in the end, the technology and how we use it says more about us than the technology itself. And I'd like to end on what I hope is a positive note and reinforce this idea that the context that technology is introduced into is essential. Any new technology is entering a very complex world of different people. This includes every individual, as well as the groups that they associate with. So we are social beings. We are also technological beings. We have been using multi-purpose and surprisingly complex technologies for as long as there have been people. And some would argue that very little has actually changed in terms of human-technology relationships, even though the hardware has advanced significantly and it has multiplied. I was intrigued then by the recent iPad commercial that I noticed didn't actually play for very long, but it was one of my favorites because it presented their newest high-end product as nothing more than a glorified pencil. They were showing that many of the things that make a tablet great are their ability to do the things that we already have the simple pencil for, like writing music, telling stories, exploring the world through science and research, learning, recording, and sharing our experiences in order to interact with each other as well as the rest of the world. And so I never thought that I would actually be able to dispel any of the deep-seated paranoia that a lot of us have about technology in the future with a talk like this. I I do want to share one more interesting idea that comes from Steve Jobs, big technology guy, who said, technology is nothing. What's important is that you have faith in people and that they're basically good and smart. And if you give them tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. And you know, it starts getting into a whole other world of philosophy. So I'm going to end there for tonight. And I welcome any questions or comments you might have.